Hey guys, Philosopher here, and today I'm going to be giving you my top war offense teams for the month of September 2021. Now, I will just tell you, I've taken some time this month in getting this list out, and the reason why is I really wanted to see in some competitive wars how this full new Warriors team with Dagger, Deathpool, and Cloak, how they played in war on both offense and defense. I've tried them out both ways, got at least a little bit of a sense of it in some competitive wars, tried to defeat them on defense, tried to use them on offense. So I at least have a pretty good sense of it. Now, I will just say that the meta is going to change, I suspect, on Wednesday. If you saw my video about the Alliance War changes, you know that I think it's going to really mean, I think, less hybrid teams going forward. I think people are going to have to go back to sort of the stock teams, synergy teams, and I also think people are going to have to dip lower in their rosters because we now have 10 war defense teams, and you're going to have to do more attacks because you have more teams to clear. So this list, and it is linked below, my war offense tier list is linked below, and I try to keep it up to date as best that I can. This is based on the meta as it is today. In other words, this is what I've learned over the last month. It kind of incorporates a lot of what I have seen, but it does not incorporate, for example, it's not a speculation predictions on how everything's going to play out once we have all of these changes. That could really change things up considerably because in addition to getting more slots, you're also going to have new buffs that are going to change, I think, how some teams play. For example, this war-ready buff is going to give a lot of additional resistance that might make, or focus that are going to make some teams, older teams, more viable than they would have been otherwise. All right, now let's go right to the list and go to the tier 1 on the list. There is only one tier 1 offense team, and that is Infinity Watch. And that's really because at this point, the entire meta in Alliance War centers around Heroes for Hire. If you get yourself in a situation where one of your members is not paying attention and uses their, or is not, coordinated well and uses their Infinity Watch against something other than Heroes for Hire, you can be in a situation where you may not be able to clear the opposing side. You end up having to throw a lot of teams at the other teams Heroes for Hire just to clear. Now, I will just say Heroes for Hire is not a hard counter at all. Is not hard countered at all by Infinity Watch. In fact, Infinity Watch, there's definitely an RNG element, and I've put out some videos about me trying my best against huge teams, but Heroes for Hire scales so well. I'm typically facing 800K, 900K, 1 million plus power teams that, what I have seen as you get that big, even though my Infinity Watch, I think is, what is it, 928K, it still, can lose or not take down everyone in the enemy. And, I think I've improved the fight, and certainly having Adam Warlock and Moondragon as skirmisher has helped just in terms of making sure, for example, that ability block lands or she reverses she removes, the positive effects on the enemy, but it's still, there's a level of RNG here. That's obviously going to change with the new team. I fully expect Weapon X to be a hard counter to Heroes for Hire, but at the moment, this team has to be managed, and its use has to be managed very carefully to make sure it is only used against Heroes for Hire, because otherwise you are stuck with a hybrid, okay? And that hybrid, which does not do very well, and you're never going to take down the full team with it, is the old Heroes for Hire counter that we used to use. So this is, like I say here, it counters Heroes for Hire without Shang-Chi. So I'll give you a sense of, for example, the version that I use is right here. I use Yo-Yo, Black Bolt, Kestrel, Surfer. You have to switch him to Skirmisher to make sure you have the focus to land. And then Emma Frost, you can use Crystal here, and in fact I have, and it works okay. Some people use Nick Fury instead of Yo-Yo. Depends on your red stars, because you remember Heroes for Hire attacks sort of the highest damage, highest health, lowest health and highest damage, lowest health. And so you really have to watch sort of who is your, who's got the highest health, who's got the lowest health, that sort of thing. The bottom line is, you're going to have to learn the Heroes for Hire passes, and what they're targeting. You're going to have to look at the size of your team and see what works best. I'll just tell you, for me, Yo-Yo worked better than Fury. For other players, they use Fury instead and just don't summon with him. But the bottom line is that this is a very imperfect counter. It worked for cleanup of Heroes for Hire. If some guy in your alliance used Infinity Watch on something else and you have to use this to try to take down a full Heroes for Hire team, it can be pretty dicey. And as I'm sure many of you discovered, trying to take down Heroes for Hire without anything else doesn't get you too far. All right, now I got to tell you, I really debated here about what I do in here tier 2 and tier 3. And I think that Secret Avengers is good enough that when you take the team with Kestrel here instead of Falcon, that it is a good enough team that you can include it in that tier. In other words, Secret Avengers with, let's say, Kestrel, I can actually do a decent job on a punch down against Infinity Watch. Not so much against Heroes for Hire, but it takes on pretty much everything else. Having Kestrel on the team really makes the team a lot stronger. This team has really strong synergy with Kestrel. Certainly, if you want to throw her on a synergy team, that is where I would use it. Use her because I think she has a lot of benefit here. But there's also a lot of value in throwing her on her own team or using her, for example, on this team to help clean up Heroes for Hire. So, if you don't want to use her here, using her on this team is going to elevate it into kind of a tier with this one where it can take down basically everything else. She's that powerful of a character. She's really such an important standalone war character as a result. Now, you'll notice that I have Falcon here, and you can see that, for example, I actually, put Fury Namor here, and then I say here, Secret Avengers, Fury plus 5th, non-Kestrel. I get a lot of people asking me, like with Secret Avengers and New Warriors, who are the, quote, 4th or 5th characters that you use? And that really depends on the team you're facing in the situation. But there's a kind of a group of characters who right now this is going to change when the new rooms come, the new war changes. But for right now, there's these set of characters that are kind of not homeless, but the rest of their team isn't needed, and so you could just throw them on a team. So I'll give you an example. One of those characters, is you can throw Fury. He works best with Secret Avengers, but for example, you could throw a character like. For example, Drax, okay, you can throw on a team if you want to make sure that they don't get somebody in your team doesn't get targeted first. He buys you some time. You can use, for example, a character like Namor. Namor is super, super powerful in war, one of the most impactful war characters. If you've got this T4 on the alt. Clears all positive effects from each target, and you get a reduced speed bar of 50%. That's pretty amazing. I just think he's a very powerful character. And then, for example, Falcon, gives additional speed on that special. That's always a useful piece. Ultron is another possibility. He goes sort of on he can kind of, add to a lot of teams just by throwing out bots and buffs and pings and that sort of thing. Squirrel Girl, I have here someplace, is another option if your team needs a cleanse. She's 120 speed. Some people use Emma for the same purpose. They're both 120 speed. Emma's a little faster because she's got that passive, but they both have a cleanse on turn 1. They can cleanse your team. Very valuable there. And there are other characters. I mean, people use everything from Shuri to Ghost or whatever extra character you have, but I think those characters are, kind of the ones that I have in mind. Okay. So, when I talk about 4ths or 5ths here, since people have asked me that question a lot, people have asked me sort of, well, what do you use Secret Avengers against? What do you use New Warriors against? I will just say I use them against almost anything. I mean, Secret Avengers are really one of the most powerful teams in the game. It takes a punch down and a very highly built up team for them to counter Infinity Watch. Okay, but they can do it on a punch down. And New Warriors are very good. I mean, you can use them with, a couple of those odd and end fourth, fifth characters I mentioned and beat like Black Order on defense. They're not going to beat Heroes for Hire. They're not going to beat Infinity Watch or something, but that's very good. I mean, to use these 3 new characters plus a couple of spare parts to beat Black Order, a very large Black Order, punch up on a Black Order, that could be a very good result. So to me, these teams are just so powerful. The power creep is real. These new teams, they are right up here in the next tier. Now, I say not Kestrel because my point is Kestrel elevates any team to another level. She's by far the best character in the game. But really what you want is you want to have her on a team where you've got a lot of summons and, ping and all that. And that's what this team is. This team here is the old Kestrel speed team that I had talked about. I did that Art of War video about, where you take Kestrel and you just throw in all the spare parts. And, you could beat a lot of teams like a Doom team and so forth. This is really nice, right? Fury has summons that do pings. Namor gets you speed bar. Ultron has summons that will ping for the defense down, where she's got that ability on her passive where she gets an out of turn attack when the enemy is has defense down when it's attacked. Falcon, of course, gives you speed bar. The problem with this team now is it uses kind of all your spare parts. Like at the time, these characters are all on the bench. So taking one character and a bunch of bench players and turning that into a whole new team was amazing. Now that we need a 4th and 5th for New Warriors and a 4th and 5th for Secret Avengers, it's less appealing. So let's talk about X Factor and Shadowland for a second. X Factor's actually been increasing in value. And the reason why is at high levels in war, Doom almost always ends up in Uncanny or Brotherhood on defense. That's where Doom is used all the time. I used to get complaints from people like, oh, that's silly. Why would you do that? But that's actually 100% what I have seen and what others have seen that I talk to in top war alliances. And the one team that can just consistently beat those Doom teams is X Factor. They have just insane amount of AoE damage, and so they could just take down Doom, even if there's a taunt there like Colossus or Blob or Juggernaut. They could just, nonetheless, the long shot Shatterstar damage is just insane, Polaris and so forth. So this team with either, let's say, Rhino against Brotherhood or Namor or somebody else, if you're going up against Uncanny, it could just make, mincemeat of an enemy Doom team. And so, for me, when you look at what are the actual tough teams to take down in war, in my mind, it's Heroes for Hire, Infinity Watch, or or I wouldn't say Secret Avengers because they have summons, but Infinity Watch, Heroes for Hire, New Warriors if they're thrown on defense, some hybrid teams that can be tricky, but Doom is right up there, and having a team that reliably takes down Doom is fantastic. Okay, and Shadowland here. So why do I have Shadowland in this tier? I got to tell you, Shadowland is, I really debated whether to put it on this tier or the next tier. But here's the thing with Shadowland. Shadowland does scale very well if you get it huge. Mine is still not huge, but some people at my level have like level 85, blue ISO on everything and so forth. Gear tier 15 on all. The team scales very well. It needs a lot of T4s. But it does scale well. But here's the thing. Moon Knight, when Hanger is up, gets a huge boost for the entire team. If this character has Deflect, he gets 20% speed bar and offense up. That lets him go very fast if Hanger's up. And so this team, when Hanger is up, can beat a lot of other teams. When Hanger's down, not as good. It's not as much. So it's conditional. But I felt like Shadowland deserves to be kind of at the bottom of this tier because at times it can be kind of, right up in this range with Secret Avengers and New Warriors if Hanger's up. If your hanger is down, it's kind of more in this range, maybe slightly better than Black Order, but it's much more down here. But I felt like putting it in this tier was reasonable from that perspective. People often ask me, how do you position this team? Shadowland, actually, it really depends on the star level of the team and what T4s you have. There's no right positioning. So if you're looking at an infographic that says this is the positioning, it's wrong. Because whether you have, for example, Electra passive changes things. The Night Nurse heal it changes depending on health. So it's going to depend on the star level of your team how you lay them out. But I do have an infographic that you can find on my Discord that talks about the T4s and ISO and all that. All right, now we go down to tier 4, and these teams these are bread and butter teams on War Offense. Like, I get people telling me all the time, like, oh, you can't, you have too many overlapping characters, Philosopher. You can't use all these teams, and that's right. But I'm doing this to anticipate questions, because if I don't put different combinations on here, I get people asking me, well, what about this team? What about that team? Everybody is using some of these tier 4 and some tier 5 teams on War Offense. And, Black Order is a team that has traditionally been on War Offense. And what I would say is I'm starting to see it more on defense because we have fewer rooms right now. That's going to change, I think, very soon as the 2 new rooms are added. I think this is going to have to come back to offense for most players, particularly since they have it very built up. But if you have everything built up, and that's the level of war I'm at, where we don't, in other words, these lists are based assuming that everything's built equally. If you are in a situation where you say, well, we have huge Axemen, but we don't have our new warriors built up, well, that's interesting, but I can't take that into account because I don't know what your roster looks like. But if you have everything built up, this team is not all that important anymore in terms of countering anything other than maybe Uncanny, and it counters that particularly well because of Ebony Moss passive, which, when you kill hero controllers, does some cool stuff. Charge and gives immunity and barrier and all that. But other than that, an ability block on the hero controller, other than countering Uncanny, this team is a good team, all around team, but it's definitely been power crept out. It doesn't really compete at this level with these new teams up here. Infinity Watch is a hard counter. Secret Avengers, New Warriors pretty easily beat them. So, Black Order, though, is a good bread and butter War Offense team. It's now kind of more in the middle of the pack rather than anything special. Skill Military is really further down this list. And, it was really hard to decide whether or not to sort of, have Black Order with Shadowland or have it with this tier with Skill Military and Axemen, because I have to say that, I didn't want to have too many tiers here, but Skill Military and Axemen have some significant limitations. When you get up to the highest levels in war, people have really moved a lot to Ultimus Mercs. If you are facing Ultimus Mercs, Ultimus gets a lot of speed bar and just erases your Red Guardian if it's big enough. It's fairly easy with the Dark Promos to get a 6 or 7 red star. Ultimus is much easier it's much cheaper in terms of Dark Promos than Ultron. And so he's appeared a lot. And what that means is, you have to be very careful. It's the reason I put Blue ISO on my Red Guardian, is so I could still use this against Ultimus Merc teams, but you have to really look at the size of the Ultimus versus the size of your Red Guardian and the size of your whole team. You need a big Punisher. But in any event, this team is getting used less and at high levels. It used to be like the Merc counter back when it was all Shuri Killmonger Mercs. Now that it is moved to be Ultimus Mercs, this team, of course, with Merc Soldier, not Killmonger, but this team here is used sometimes against Ultimus Mercs. So obviously, it's used against Shuri Mercs a lot. It's also used against some other teams, whether it's Sinister Six or Wave 1. It can be used against a lot of different teams. It's good. It's another sort of bread and butter War Offense team, but it's not as super important to counter Mercs as it was, just, let's say, a month or two ago. All right. And now we get to the next one on our list. That's Astonishing X-Men. I hear from people all the time who are like, hey, I'm in Platinum 1 or Gold 4. And Astonishing X-Men is like the core of our wars. They're all about where you use your Axemen, because everyone's got huge Axemen, but they don't have these other teams built up. And, that's fair. I will just say it's like that for a lot of these teams. In other words, if you have a massive Black Order or symbiotes and you're going up against tiny secret Avengers, well, you're going to obviously get, you're punching down and so forth. But when you have everything built out at fairly equal levels, and my X-Men, I don't know, they're maybe 600K now or something like that, 700K. And this is big. This is because I've been putting some extra T4s in them, and I blue ISO'd all of them for Doom 2. I've been, I roll with them in the 650 something range, even when I have these other teams that are much larger, because they just don't. They're not the best at countering almost anything. They're kind of a lower end team. So I've been seeing it more and more in defense, either as the full team or in a hybrid. What I would just say is, at high levels, this isn't as necessary. That's going to change, I think, in the next patch, because I think the additional rooms mean that people are going to have to run them on offense. This team shines when there's summons to kill. They're going to make mincemeat of if people are foolish enough to put Kestrel and Secret Avengers, let's say, together on defense. Well, there's all these summons between a Maria Hill and Fury and whatever, and they just, they get destroyed by X-Men. Sinister Six gets destroyed by X-Men, and I've been seeing more Sinister Six on offense for that reason. But I will just say that, I think that, to be very blunt, this team is good, but it's more of a raid team. It's a little bit, in my view, a little bit overrated in areas outside of raid. All right, now let's get back to the tier list, and we go right here to Hydra 3.0. This team has actually become more important, and I've considered moving this up my list. Hydra has become more important because this team, when I say Hydra 3.0, what I mean is, this is a team where, let's see, oops, go to war here. I'm still getting used to these tabs. A team like this, a lot of people use another minion or use Drax. Sometimes I change depending on the team. I just put G14 on Winter Soldier because obviously that legendary unlock. But, this is a team that can counter Mercs very well. It's a really good counter to Ultimus Mercs, and it can counter a lot of other teams. And the way it works is that Grenadier is the highest damage. It's very easy to get him to be a higher damage than Zemo because his base damage stat's a lot higher. And then what happens is, let's say Taskmaster puts Taunt on him, and then the Mercs kill him, and then he just gets rezzed up by Red Skull. And in the meantime, Zemo solos the enemy team. It works very well. Sniper is good. You really need to have the T4 on Sniper's special if you're going to use him, because otherwise, if you don't have the T4 there, he puts offense up to some but not all of his allies, which means that sometimes through random chance he'll put it on, let's say, Zemo but not Grenadier, and then Zemo will have 50% more damage. He'll out damage Grenadier, and then he'll get taunt and get erased, and you'll lose. So you have to, that's the one downside of using Sniper, who otherwise provides speed and offense up to the team. All right, next here I've got X-Force is the next team here. And, this is a team, I actually put some blue ISO on it after this recent event just because I have a lot of blue ISO, but also this is a team I think now with the expanded rooms will have an increased importance, because otherwise it's just been falling off. It's a team that is used in every war, but it's sort of for the lower end meta teams or, that sort of thing, or cleanup or whatever. It's not a really important once you have everything unlocked. But now with, I think, the expanded number of defense teams, I think this will have increased importance. It's really all about your Negasonic and X-23. The rest of the team, not nearly as important. I do see people wanting to remove Domino from the team. That's a big mistake because, that means essentially that you are going to lose all of the evades that she gives you, and I think that really reduces your survivability. See, 75% chance to apply evade on every ally's turn. Plus, she fills speed bar, and I just for herself and the allies. I think without Domino, the team sucks, in much worse. So don't take Domino out of the team. Next team is Brotherhood 2.0. And that's another one where I could see people like, really? Well, now that there's 10 teams that, I think they'll be more important. But look, they're an effective team at countering certain stuff, whether it's symbiotes on defense or PIM or Technerva or whatever. We'll see more of those teams. This is a team that's really moved a lot to war defense. That may change next month, but if you need to use them on war offense, they're still an effective offense team because they do one thing very well, which is Magneto gets a lot of speed bar. They put blind on everyone, and then there's taunts that you have 2 taunts here, particularly Blob, that kind of keep the enemy away while you get some bleeds on and try to whittle them down. It's obviously a one-trick pony, and if it's a team that isn't susceptible to those debuffs and blind and everything, you lose. But against certain teams like symbiotes, you really can win. One thing I'll say is having a big blob is very important to the team. All right, next on the list is the symbiotes. Now, we'll just say here, symbiotes are a team that I think has really fallen a lot in war over the years, and over the last months, I should say, not years, but they are a team that in my mind, has had a lot of value in the past, and they were actually, I would say, very important in the past. They were, for example, when Doom was first coming out, he was very much, I would say, I wouldn't say hard countered, but he was often taken down by the symbiotes. And now, unfortunately, people are for the symbiotes, people are putting Doom behind taunts like Uncanny or blinds like Brotherhood and making it so symbiotes can't work there. So symbiotes are great if they're summons. They don't work quite as well against Secret Avengers, although they can. It depends on what's paired with the Secret Avengers. At Kestrel, they don't do quite as well. But if it's not in Kestrel version, it's easily countered by symbiotes. But I will just say that symbiotes are a team, that I think is still a bread and butter team used in war, either in offense or defense. I see them more in defense now. And that's just, it is what it is. And that's really just because the team is, a little slow and long in the tooth. It takes time to get rolling, and new teams just outclass them. It's that simple. All right, the rest of these teams I'm not going to go through too much. Uncanny X-Men, they lost a lot when Beast was moved off the team. If you keep Beast on the team and throw in Ultron, the team becomes a lot better. But obviously you don't want to break up your X-Men. Hella Natural is an interesting team. It was very useful when you had the OG Wave 1 team. Now that Black Widow's off the team, it's less useful. I think you'll see it in war against things like Wave 1 and, depending on what the 5th character is, and against Sinister 6 and so forth. Fantastic Four plus Ultron, useful to counter Uncanny or to counter... some other people use it against Marauders. It's not as reliable there. You drop Human Torch for Ultron. It's okay team. Probably we'll see it more, like I said, with more war rooms. The rest of these are teams that you don't really use anymore, but that may change. Okay, and I leave these on here because a lot of people are at all different levels of war, and I want to answer their questions as best I can here. So this is Inhumans, the straight Uncanny X-Men. This is just the full team, with Karnak and Quake. The Uncanny X-Men just without Beast, just the regular team, whether you have Psylocke, Wolverine, whoever you have in their Storm. Zemo Hydra without Red Skull, okay, not nearly as good if you just throw him in there with, Winter Soldier and Crossbones or whatever. That team's only going to really counter Red Skull on defense, which you don't see that much anymore. Supernatural, you need a lot of T4s, and it's pretty power crept. Regular Fantastic Four, Power Armor, very bad team right now. Young Avengers, Pimtech, AIM. These are all really low-end teams at this point that you don't see much in war, but that will change, I suspect, in the upcoming patch. All right, guys, if you like this video, smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel. If you have comments, leave them below, or go to my Discord. That's linked below as well. Lots of great Alliance War conversation there. And if you also check out my Twitch stream, that is linked below as well.